Sorry, I forgot to ask, going back to the hours of operation, you mentioned that the outdoor space would be a fresh air lounge, and I'm just wondering if the hours of operation for that outdoor space, is that consistent with the indoor space specific to the banquet hall, meaning that if I were having a wedding at that location, I could use that outdoor space until 10 p.m. weeknights and 11 p.m. weekends? Is that consistent?
Yes.
Okay.
But of course, you can't have live music or anything, so it's not going to be a band outside where it's just,
Sure.
So the noise is very controlled outside. It is, like I said, a space where people can just get fresh air.
Mm-hmm. And my last question, thank you for the grace, my number of questions here, was I heard that you were able to connect with the Southtown Corridor Improvement Authority, or you were not able to connect?
I did. I had a very good conversation with Southtown, and they informed us about all the resources and how we're right in that area. And they also informed us that it is something that they are looking forward to being in the community as well, where they can host their meetings and us just, it all being that inclusive part and us all working together, amplify Boston, Oakdale, and Southtown.
And you're working on that grant application with Southtown?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
One of the things that came up during Elizabeth's presentation was the fact that you are not allowed, that smoking is going to be prohibited on the property. But is that just inside or is it outside? What are your thoughts on a designated smoking area?
I want the campus to be fully smoke-free.
Okay.
That's indoors and outdoors. And if it is something that you feel like you have to do, maybe go back to your car or something like that, but I do prefer for the campus to be smoke-free.
Okay, thank you. And then we talked about the fence. Are there other landscaping plans?
Yeah, absolutely. They're not pinpointed. That is something that, we're going to work with Southtown about, because they do. I also spoke with them about a course that they have that is for smaller businesses. So they do have a lot of information and resources that we're going to reach out and connect with, and that is definitely one of them. How do we bring this building up to, code when it comes to landscaping and things like that?
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, commissioners, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll open up the public hearing. So if you're here today on this case at 821 and 825 Oakdale Street Southeast, now is your opportunity to come forward and share your thoughts with us. I ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less and that you start with your full name, please. And feel free to queue up if there's several of you.
Hey, my name is Delshon Tyler. I'm the grandson of Mary McGee, brother of Erica Tyler. Like she said, we've been in that neighborhood over 30 years. And before this banquet hall came about, it was an opportunity to do a market. So when COVID happened, we was looking for a way to benefit the community, our community. We know the Miss Bradshaws, the Waltons, the older people who can't get to the stores and do things for themselves. So this is not just an opportunity for us to build generational wealth. It's an opportunity for us to give back to our community. We spoke about having things, meetings with some of the younger kids. Like y'all know, this is a high crime area. We know the parents, we know the children, we know everybody. We know everything that's happening in our community. There's opportunity for the younger guys and women that look like us to come meet with us, talk to us, build with us, do business classes, do lessons, teach them, kind of guide them in a better direction. So we wanted to make sure we used this space to just give back as much as we could. So I just wanted to put that in there.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Tyler. I'm Delshon's and Erica's mom, and that's my mother, Mary McGee. I was the first one out of my mom had did hair over 50 years. I branched out and started doing daycare. I did daycare out of that building for 20 years. I employed 9 people within those 20 years I was there. I had over 300 some kids within a year I was there. And so that's where my kids is branching off into the foundation that I set. And I'm asking you all to let them go to another level. Thank you.
How you guys doing? Jonathan Jelks, lifelong Southeast Grand Rapids resident. And I just want to first speak to the Salt of the Earth people that the Tyler family are in the Oakdale neighborhood. They've been in the neighborhood for generations, and to see this opportunity to activate Southeast Grand Rapids in this way is powerful, and it's inspirational, and it's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. Oftentimes we know that government, the job is to make sure that we're following by code and we're abiding by the rules, and that anything that's new is being resurrected in the right way. But government also has an obligation to be a part of the indigenous community, actually investing their resources and seeing these small businesses win. So if there are some things, some impediments that we see that we need to work through with the younger generation of entrepreneurs who are building out this business, it's really vital that we see the government work with these entrepreneurs and not against. And it's so important in this time where there's so much gentrification going on. We have people with foreign resources who can, find really cool ways to come into neighborhoods that, they haven't been invested in all their lives. And when we see a situation like this, where we have people from that neighborhood who care about the kids who live there, who have plans to really activate and help people gain confidence to do this stuff, to have ownership, it's important that we make this happen. So I implore you to take this into great consideration, because the community is watching. We are going to be definitely holding things in our neighborhoods accountable, and we want our government to be working with us. And I appreciate your time.
Anyone else on this case?
Good afternoon. My name is Joanne King. I have sat on the Southtown BASP board as a member of the Oakdale neighborhood, and this request is premature. It's premature because what needs to be in place is not in place. And before you grant a variance to a premature request, it opens the door for problems. One of the major problems, I'm a long-time resident on Oakdale Street. I was there the night of May 16th, or the morning of May 16th, where that shooting occurred right across from my house. 2 toddlers in that building, and a grandmother and their mother and father. Bullets don't have direction. You can't control who comes to that facility, okay? Because you can only control who you rent to, but the rentees may invite whomever. The parking was a major issue. Parking on every street, in no parking zones, at fire hydrants. So it was very irresponsible to us as the residents of that neighborhood, and I've been there since 1979. So I am boots on the ground. I know that neighborhood, and this is premature to grant a variance to an organization where it appeared that they took no responsibility in the detriment that happened on that day. But it wasn't just that day. On May 30th, after being told by the zoning board you could not have anything at that property past 6 p.m., they had another party. Okay, thereafter, the party bus blocking traffic going westbound on Oakdale, where you had to go around in the opposing lane. Now, I'm all out for doing anything that would help the neighborhood, but this is a hindrance, and this is about making money. This is about lining somebody's pockets monetarily, and it's not about how you care for our neighborhood. People who live there in that 800 block shouldn't have to be forced to park on the backside of their houses just because there is no parking in front of their house. I have paid property taxes summer and winter for 40 plus years. I should have the right as a homeowner in that neighborhood to be able to access my neighborhood, to live in simple peace, to have the peace that I can go to sleep at any time of the night that I desire in my own home and not have to be invaded by the sounds of bullets, by the sounds of noise from all of these vehicles that descended upon our neighborhood. I am totally against granting a variance. When you open that can of worms, be careful what you do, because it's not yet, that property is not sustainable for a banquet hall. It has limited parking. It will not sustain the amount of people that showed up in our neighborhood on May 16th, on May 30th, and only till after a fine was given did they stop. They have advertised via social media for people to give their deposits even before putting this application in. Now, they may be good people, and I don't really know them that well, but it's not about them. It's about us who had to endure the bombardment of the excessive traffic that came on into our neighborhood, the excessive noise, the violence. Our insurance rate in the 49507 area is very high because of the violence and the crime perpetrated in our neighborhood, not necessarily by us, but by those who come into it. I implore you that you do not grant this waiver, that you think about those two babies that could have been killed that night.
All right, thanks, Ms. King. Your time's expired. Real quickly, though, I'd like to ask, you called the application premature. Is there something you think it's missing or some step that they needed to take for it to not be premature? Or are you simply against the use as a banquet facility?
First of all, the major issue is parking.
Okay.
That facility that is west of their building that they say they own, which is said on the Access Kent property lookup, is foreclosed. So now that parcel of property, which is an auto shop, which has cars, which they're going to force that operator of that business to move them in, that is not going to sustain the amount of traffic that has come into the neighborhood.
All right.
They were using the parking lot, the vacant lot next to 814 Oakdale as parking. That is unacceptable for those seniors who live in that residence to have to endure that.
Okay.
Also,
thank you.
Privacy fences don't stop noise. I have one. It doesn't stop noise.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Anyone else on this case? You'll be able to come up at the end of the public hearing and address comments, yes.
How y'all doing? My name is Lawrence Turley. I'm a resident in Grand Rapids as well. To your family, thank you all for bringing what you're wanting to bring to our community to not only help this community, but help us as Grand Rapids as a wide. This is truly inspirational for what you guys are doing. I also like to just mention that we'll say like 500 yards across, not even, there was a banquet facility held in this neighborhood for over 20 plus years that was just burned down like a year ago. And the exact same thing. So for anybody to be against positivity coming into our community where we can build generational wealth, not just money, but changing the stigma in this area and not letting it go to just white people and letting us build so that we can actually grow and pass on things down to our family. So I just want to say thank y'all for doing what y'all are doing in our community outside of what y'all doing in y'all family, but what y'all doing in this part of the community is triggering everybody across the Grand Rapids and doing good stuff. So thank y'all. I appreciate that.
All right, anyone else? No, sorry, you could have Erica speak for you, but the public only has one opportunity. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. If the applicant wants to come back up and address anything that was raised, that's fine.
I wanted to touch base on our neighbor here. Her concerns are very, very valid. But once again, let's go back into the timeline. We've been there 30 years. This was the first. She's listed 2 incidents. in those whole 30 years. So that has to be taken into account as well. Once those incidents happened, we stepped into action to correct those. So we are very sorry that did happen. It was not anything that we wanted to happen because, once again, we live in that neighborhood too. So now that we have the formula for the parking and the amount of people that can be there and the time that people can be there, the only thing that we can do is go forward the correct way. And like Turley said, it was a banquet hall not even 200 feet away from our building. So that shows that the neighborhood can sustain it. It is possible because it was just, right there. And then, unfortunately, his building burned down. So on behalf of my family, we do want to say sorry. And like we did invite the community to come out and voice those concerns at the meeting that we did on January 8th. And that was why, because we wanted to hear these type of things so that we can work together and not be against each other, because that is the main purpose. She lives in that neighborhood. We do too. We want to sustain our family business, and she wants to sustain her household as well. So hopefully we can continue to move forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any follow-up questions for the applicants at this point?
Yeah, I have one. So when we were talking about the lighting and the SEPTED ordinance, so in our packet, we have a recommendation to have a condition of approval to upgrade that lighting to meet those requirements. And you said there are already lights. Would you be willing to do all of the, meet all the requirements of the?
Like I said, we are ready to do what needs to be done so that it is a safe environment, not only for the patrons, but for the neighborhood and us as well. So that's important, and you guys have been doing this, so you guys know what is required, and you guys can see further than we can because it is something that is new for us. So whatever needs to be done, it has to be done, and we'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, commissioners, for the applicant? No? All right. Then discussion on the proposed use.
I just have a question for staff. So appreciate the applicant's willingness to bring the lighting up to SEPTED code. Kristen, can you speak at all to the impact on the residential if that parking lot is lit or that outdoor space is lit consistent with the SEPTED obligation?
So from a zoning perspective, we do have dark sky compliant regulations, so they would be required to have full cutoff fixtures. There's also a maximum foot candle that would be allowed, and so we call it a photometric plan that would have to be submitted with the lighting upgrades. There is also a requirement that it drops down to no greater than 1 foot candle at the lot line. So there are regulations in place, and those are designed to protect both, the dark sky compliance requirements as well as the neighbors, so there's not light spill or nuisances on the adjacent properties.
I have one more question, maybe for Elizabeth and Kristen around landscape buffering. Have we proposed a required landscape buffer obligation? Or, I know the applicant has said they're willing to do what we need to do, but to Ms. King's point around a fence doesn't necessarily create a noise buffer. Have we made a recommendation to the applicant around landscape buffering adjacent to the residential? Okay.
No, we did not get into the details of what they would need to do for to bring the site up to compliance. So in their application, they did say that they were going to do landscaping, but they didn't provide details. So I thought they could elaborate on that. If they didn't elaborate on that, they would be required to meet the requirements of the ordinance, which would be landscape buffering around the back and the side of the parking lot, as well as in the front as landscape screening. And a fence can be part of that.
Thank you.
So one thing in thinking about the parking waiver and the access to transit, which it does have, it has a bus stop really close by. But looking at the schedule of the number 4 bus, it goes until, it seems to pass by there around 10:30, 10:45 on the weekdays, but it ends at like 9:30 on the weekends, or on Saturday at least, and might be even earlier on Sunday. So that might be something for us to consider, whether the transit would be a viable way home for folks from an event.
I appreciate the longevity and the willing to look at adding other kinds of services to this site, but I am concerned in listening to one of the speakers about the parking issue, given that at first I thought, oh, across the street, but that is not an appropriate use there. To do parking there. So I don't know, I'm a bit torn over that parking, and I know what it can be like in a small space with a lot of traffic for an event and the congestion it can cause. I don't know if there's any other suitable solution.
Well, I think, to be clear, most of the uses that are proposed relative to the religious institution, the daycare, and the residential uses, those are not what is causing the parking concern.
Yes,
right?
I
So
agree.
it appears that the banquet facility and the intensity and the occupant load and the parking requirements of the ordinance, and also experience that we've seen with other venues, is that the parking demand is fairly significant, and whether adequate parking is available, both in this lot, which ordinance-wise it's deficient, and also in the immediate vicinity, may not be adequate to support the banquet use portion.
Thank you for that explanation. That is what I was meaning.
Other thoughts, commissioners?
I personally love this. It's folks in the community trying to build up their own community, and that speaks for itself. And if they've been doing this for 30 years, I think that also speaks for itself. And I think we can definitely work with them. I think there's some workaround with helping them, because what we find with folks, especially who live in neighborhoods like this, like mine, is that we just don't have the knowledge. We don't have the resources. We don't have the understanding with coming to places like this about those little details, right? From lights to fences to the whole 9 yards. And so obviously the parking is a concern for a banquet hall, but I think everything else is the community helping itself, which is the first priority. And I think us working with that also speaks volumes. The fact that we're willing to help out people who are obviously helping themselves. So that's all I had on that.
I appreciate that, and I do appreciate, too, the amount of different resources that have been brought together, everything from police to planning to neighborhood organizations, and I do think that shows a very strong the strong willingness to do this correctly, and it is an investment to the community. I'm familiar with the quarter grants, and those are very helpful to help get, the kinds of things that we want, the kind of improvements that make this a more appealing, safer kind of environment and corridor.
Elizabeth or Kristen, maybe you can help me with this. Is there on-street parking on both sides of Eastern at that intersection by Oakdale. Looks like there's parking on at least one side. Yeah, that's what I'm. It looks like there's bump outs at the intersection, and then there is pretty long stretches. And considering that's the kind of the hub of the TBA, I can't imagine that it's heavily used in the evenings. There's not a bunch of homes right there at that intersection, so that might be a relief area that they could encourage any staff that they have for events, or the people renting the space. That could be a place to encourage folks to park instead of heading further east into the neighborhood. Other thoughts, commissioners?
Yeah, just on parking, I mean, we don't want to set these folks up to fail, right? So in their facility agreement that you submitted on parking, there's no language in there that would be consistent with the draft resolution around discouraging patrons from parking in residential neighborhoods. So if we're going to make that a condition of approval, want to make sure we call that out, that it probably needs to be included in your facility agreement. And to the chairman's point around encouraging staff to park on Eastern away from the neighborhood parking so that you're not impacting the neighborhood the way that I know I hear you say you don't want to. So just want to make sure that there's consistency in any kind of obligation we might have with regard to the conditions of approval.
Other thoughts? Okay, is someone willing to make a motion? At least take a stab at it?
I'm happy to take a stab at it.
Thank you.
With the help of my fellow commissioners, I hope, and staff. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of Erica Tyler to use an existing building for a church and banquet hall with alcohol service and outdoor event space at 821 and 825 Oakdale Street Southeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will support the purpose and intent of the TNTBA zone district to encourage a mix of uses in the commercial area. It supports the goals of the Southtown Business Area Specific Plan to be a more stable and thriving business community without displacement by encouraging supportive reuse of underutilized spaces and be a more vibrant place to work, shop, play, learn, live, and do business. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of section 5.12.8.e because the building is existing and substantially conforms with the TNTBA site layout and building element requirements, and the site will be brought closer to conformity with current site requirements. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood because the proposed use will be consistent with the desired mixed-use nature of the neighborhood and will provide a desired amenity in the neighborhood. The use will also activate an underutilized site. Potentially adverse effects arising from the proposed use will be minimized because the operator and/or her designee will be on the premises during events, and landscape buffering and fencing, parking lot screening will be provided between the subject site and the neighboring residential uses. The proposed uses will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic noise and glare, because the events will cease by a reasonable time to be established in another condition, and entertainment will be fully contained indoors. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair the pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the building is already located at a sidewalk. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the conditions of the special land use approval will limit nuisances and require police or code enforcement actions. The use will encourage other investment in the area. Given the character, location, development trends, and other aspects of the neighborhood, it is demonstrated that the area is underserved by the proposed use and that the proposed location for alcohol sales will demonstrably be an asset to the neighborhood because there are no other facilities in the immediate vicinity, and a number of surrounding neighbors have expressed support for the proposed use. The use or change in use is constructed and operated by the applicant is compatible with the neighborhood because neighbors have not expressed significant concern about the proposed use. Adjacent or nearby parks, playgrounds, religious institutions, or schools will not adversely be affected because there will be no sale of alcohol for off-site consumption. The use as proposed will be operated by the applicant. The use as proposed to be operated by the applicant will not have any or minimal negative secondary effects on the neighborhood because the applicant has procedures prepared so that the use will be operated in a manner that has the potential to minimize or eliminate negative secondary effects on the neighborhood. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard condition set A, which should pop up on your screen, but I will read to. A1, that the application and plans submitted by the applicant and signed, dated, and stamped by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans, except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and/or as amended in this resolution. 2, that the use shall operate according to the application and per applicant testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. 3, that this approval does not include any proposed signs, and any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. 4, that a land use development services or LUDS permit, building permit, and any other required permits be obtained by the applicant from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. That any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. That the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. And that this approval shall take effect 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission's decision. 2, and I may need a gut check on these times, I think I wrote them down, but that events shall cease by 10:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday and 11 p.m. Friday through Sunday, with the facility vacated by 12 o'clock a.m. Friday through Sunday. New Year's Eve events may operate until 12:30 a.m. with the facility vacated by 1 a.m. Okay. That. Sure. So with the facility vacated Monday through Thursday by
I had
11.
10 o'clock.
Pardon me?
I had 6 to 10 Monday through Thursday, vacated by 11. Or was it?
Events shall cease by 10:30 Monday through Thursday, and the facility shall be vacated by 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday.
I had written down events 6 to 10, Monday through Thursday,
6
vacated
to
by
10.
11.
I never heard 10:30.
All right. That's just
10.
what the proposed application. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Carol, you got that straight? All right. Thank you for all the assistance. Yes. 3, that music and dancing incidental to a private event may be permitted, but there shall be no events or ticket sales to the general public at which admission is charged at the door. 4, that the operator and her designee shall be on the premise and/or her designee shall be on the premises during all events. That the event space may accommodate up to 86 individuals, subject to occupancy determination by the City of Grand Rapids building officials and applicable building and fire codes. 6, that a noise analysis shall be conducted by a qualified engineer, and if necessary, the building shall be soundproofed to meet the requirements of the Noise Control Ordinance of the City of Grand Rapids, Chapter 151, Article 5 of the City Code. 7, that the doors and windows shall remain closed during events. 8, that the rental agreement shall include prohibitions on congregating or loitering and the consumption of alcoholic beverages in the parking lot, and shall discourage parking within the residential neighborhoods in the vicinity. 9, that required site improvements shall include, but may not be limited to, the construction of a trash enclosure, the installation of a 6-foot-tall privacy fence along the north and east property lines, parking lot striping, the installation of lighting to bring the site in conformity with SEPTED requirements, and landscaping buffering to bring the site closer to conformity with parking lot screening requirements along the north and east property lines. 10, that 821 and 825 Oakdale shall be combined into a single lot. And 11, that an indoor events license shall be obtained from the office of the city clerk. I think that's the conclusion of my motion, unless I forgot anything.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have support?
I'll support.
Would you consider striking E3 regarding the, in here? It's the neighborhood concern one.
I think I changed the language to say that neighbors had not expressed significant concern about the proposed use, and
Okay.
I don't want to be disrespectful to the opposition we did here.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
we'll keep it.
I have a question before we vote. On E1, it says that use and that the proposed location for alcohol sales. I understood that this was not to include alcohol sales, so I wonder, or direct sales, that people would be served alcohol but not be purchasing alcohol. So I wonder if sales should be changed to consumption.
I think that's a great catch. Thanks, Commissioner Shannon. So Carol, we're talking about E1, the language would change from proposed location for consumption of alcohol will demonstrably be an asset neighborhood instead of sales.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Our next case is 960 and 1004 Diamond Ave Northeast. And when Elizabeth's ready, she can walk us through this.
I'm sorry, could I ask you to take any discussion out? I'll be happy to talk to you after the meeting.
They act like I'm the only one that submitted
It was in the packet, but it was just submitted the other day, so, yes, it was in the packet, it was mentioned in the staff report. The next item on the agenda is a request to construct a multifamily development at 960 and 1004 Diamond Avenue Northeast. The project consists of 6 dwelling units in 3 two-unit buildings. This is before you today because multiple family residential development is subject to special land use approval in the MCN LDR zone district. And as you can see, the property is in the LDR zone district. It's not really shown on this map or in the aerial photo, but it is south of Leonard Street on Diamond. And this property is not addressed in an area-specific plan, but the 2002 master plan designates this area as low-density residential. The staff report includes a number of elements of goals of the master plan that are supportive of redevelopment and housing types other than single-family detached residential housing. The two properties, there are two properties, but they're commonly owned, and the northerly property is improved with a single-family home and garage, and there are two other small outbuildings. The house is under orders for repair or demolition. And here's a survey of the property. Combined, the two properties are about 22,000 square feet, a little bit shy of half an acre. Here's the site plan showing what's proposed. 3 two-unit buildings are proposed, and each building will have 2 stories. The ground level unit does have a garage incorporated into the structure, and is accessed from either the garage or the front. The upper level unit is accessed from the rear by a stairway going up to the second story. And as you can see, additional parking is proposed in a parking lot at the rear of the property. There are 3 separate driveways for each of the dwelling units, and then a shared driveway for the middle building and the parking lot in the rear. In general, we discourage multiple drive approaches. However, the applicant has gone through a couple of different iterations of this project and did combine the driveways for the northerly 2 units. And that really resulted in a really large expanse of concrete in the front yard, and they divided the driveways, and we're much more satisfied with this iteration. We think this is really this is better, and we appreciate that they made that change. Also, given the nature of this street and the number of vehicles that will be using this driveway, we find that this to be an appropriate arrangement. Relative to the site plan, the plan does show some landscaping along the front. Additionally, landscape buffering is required around this parking lot, and that can be addressed at LUD's permitting if you find this to be an appropriate project. The setbacks do meet all the minimum requirements. For the zone district, as does the required building line, and the required building line is appropriate given the other buildings on the block. This zone district, the MCN LDR, requires that at least 50% of the front facade be located at the RBL, and the applicant did make some changes. It had to tweak the design just slightly to meet that requirement. It does meet that requirement as shown on this site plan, as well as the floor plan. I think, I'm not sure that the elevations were updated to reflect that. It might be just the way I'm looking at it. It doesn't appear to meet that, but it does need, the site plan does show that 50% at the RBL, as do the floor plans, and that is what is expected here. The building elevations do meet the materials requirement and height limits. I forgot to mention on the site plan that the site will exceed the 30% green space requirement. 48% tree canopy will be required for this use, and they will need to provide those calculations at LUD's permitting. I also want to mention that, the site isn't exactly wooded, but there's a number of trees on the two lots. Most of the trees in the area that is to be developed would be removed. There are some trees and other vegetation around the edges, and the applicant indicates in the removal plan that some of that isn't expected to be retained. You can see this, these kind of squiggly lines here show the extent of the tree removal. So significant, any trees in that area would be removed to facilitate this development. There is a bit of a grade change toward the rear of the lot, and the parking lot will need to be built up in order to make a flat surface. Relative to parking, each dwelling unit requires a space and a half, and with an additional quarter space required for each bedroom above 2. 10 parking spaces are required for the proposed unit mix, with a total of 12 spaces. 10 spaces are required and 12 spaces are proposed. And so parking is adequate, and also the site is not overparked. Relative to location, multiple family dwellings are to be located on a regional, major, or city collector street, or within 200 feet of such a street. Diamond Avenue is a city collector street and would not need a waiver from that requirement. It's also in close proximity to Leonard Street, which is a bus line. At this time, I've not received any correspondence, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one related to the parking. So I did see that the lot is striped for 12, but I'm wondering if the garages and driveways are part of the parking calculation?
Oh my gosh, I think I totally forgot that. So I think I didn't even count that.
So would that be an additional two spaces per unit?
I think that's only, I think they're single space garages.
Okay.
6, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there's 15 parking spaces.
So a follow-up to that, and I think this is something that the applicant would address, but in the narrative of their plan, they talked about optional studio scenarios in the 3 bedrooms. And if you look at the, what to call it right now. The layout, yeah, whatever. It has the little kitchenettes in there, and so I'm hoping the applicant can talk more about that, and then maybe that will relate to the parking scenario at some point as well as we get down the road.
Sure. I guess I would say I think I overlooked language relative to an optional studio, but that could not be created as or rented as a separate dwelling unit.
Thank you.
Other questions for Elizabeth? Okay, thanks. I'll invite the applicant up if there's other details you want to share with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rod Harlings. I'm with HLI LLC. I also work with Remax Real Estate here in Grand Rapids. And I am going to try to fill in some of the gaps maybe that were missed. I guess some of the inspiration behind the plan, if I can just start there, is that you'll notice that the main floor is barrier-free, is what I'd like to call it for a lack of maybe the right political word. Universal design might be another thing that they're using, but well, everything was kind of designed around the barrier-free idea, and the bus route came into a big play there, and there's just been a significant amount of need that I've been seeing, and so this plan allowed us to put a barrier-free and then put a two-story traditional front on the, oops. Elizabeth, help me. On the unit, there it is. So the upstairs is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath unit with 2 kitchenettes. So one of the questions has come is what is that about? Is that a studio? That was I guess an idea that we'd like to have some discussion on that would allow that unit to be subleased to someone who maybe is not looking for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and that unit could then be an additional sublease of their lease for, let's say, a young professional, a single person. And so that's where the parking was designed to meet the, I guess, idea of having a potential of 3 bedrooms up and then 1 bedroom down. So I don't know if that helps to answer that, but that was one idea. I know there's some talk about with the main floor, there's been considerable amount of interest from various parties, but that there's usually someone who would offer care, and so that could possibly be a unit that they could rent, since the unit is under one ownership, or the project's under one ownership. So I'm going to stop there a little bit and ask Dave if he wants to bring anything up.
Dave Hanko with Feenstra & Associates, Engineering and Surveying. I'll just address the drainage. That's always a large consideration in these projects. We are connecting the parking lot and the roof drains and footing drains to an in-ground system. This will allow the water to be collected and infiltrate into the ground. It'll keep it from ponding and causing a hazard to young children. It's better environmentally. We want the water to get back into the groundwater to keep those aquifers from dropping. Thank you.
I don't know if Elizabeth's gotten the endorsement from the Highland Park Association, and I don't know if that's part of your package, but we have engaged the Neighborhood Association with the design. I think what the conversation was centered around was that this is going to look very single-family residential-ish, and I think that that's what the sentiment was from the group. And so I think this would fit very nicely into their expectations also. So that was kind of the reason for the design. It's really difficult also to get a main floor barrier-free unit to have obviously a two-story because accessibility to that second story. So this does allow for us to have that potential mix of tenants. Right now, there aren't a lot of developers who are speculatively building these types of barrier-free units. So I wish I had a bunch of comparables that I could refer to, but I don't. So we are looking at this based on just our market research and really feel that there could be a big market here. So happy to talk about that more.
All right, commissioners, any questions for the applicant? No? Kristen?
I had a question / concern. So I think unfortunately, because of the way our ordinances is structured, those studio units, or what you've called the, I've lost my floor plan here, sorry. The ancillary unit within the second floor unit, the ordinance is not set up to facilitate that. And so we do allow accessory dwelling units when they're in association with a single family dwelling, which these are not, of course. Certainly a conversation that we want and need to have as part of our master plan update. We're not there yet. And so I think, we would either need to look for modifications to the floor plan so that you're not separating out that what effectively is a second unit upstairs. And maybe in the future, that's something that we could look to add back into the project. But right now, the Planning Commission doesn't have the authority to allow for those, what we would call an accessory dwelling unit, to be rented separately. Alternatively, I think that the density could allow you to have up to 10 units, I think Elizabeth's staff report. We didn't notice that as such, but if that's something that's desired, it wouldn't be a sublease of the second floor unit, but you could increase the number of dwelling units within the project. It certainly appears that way.
Yeah, and I think that that's our goal, to make this a sustainable project instead of just having that 3-bedroom, 2-bath, to be able to offer that option. And so that was a really important part of doing this project for us.
Okay.
So if we can get an extra unit and call it good there, then that's fine, however we want to do that.
Yeah.
And it might be leased as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. We just don't know at this moment.
Again, our ordinance isn't set up to provide that flexibility at this point, which I would actually agree with you is unfortunate, because we do want to encourage and support a variety of housing options. So the Planning Commission's authority would be to allow for either up to 10 units, asterisk that for a moment, up to 10 units, or authorize the 6th unit as proposed. I say asterisk that because it was noticed as a project for 6 units. So we could always, I know it's not ideal and I apologize, but we could always pause this conversation, renotice for the 9 units, and then you would have that flexibility to allow for 9 units. Now, the internal arrangements of how those operate would be more of a private matter. If they're caregivers of the second floor tenant, those are more private lease arrangements. So those are kind of the 2 options after hearing your desire. So I'm not really sure how you'd like to proceed.
If I can ask, or ask anyone here, how does that affect the building? Are there going to be different than construction codes that are going to be incurred by going to that 3rd unit from the 2 units? And that's why we wanted to keep the 2 units, because it sounded like there was going to be a bump in construction standards if we went with like fire suppression, things of that nature that really make that building go. And so price is or cost is a very sensitive issue here.
Sure. I'm not the building inspector, so I don't want to speak for the building code, but in my experience, yes, you're right. Going from a duplex to a 3 or above does trigger different building code standards. The cost implications of that is something that, I would need to pull in our building team.
So I'm open because we're still early. Nobody's digging any foundations until spring. So we have time to figure out this and get it right. So
Okay.
absolutely, if that's something that we can work with.
Yeah, so if you're open to that, and I'm seeing a few nodding heads around the table, perhaps it might be in our best interest, yours included, to ask the Planning Commission to postpone a decision on this case, and for us to meet with the building department and then renotice the case potentially as a higher density project than what we're seeing today.
Yes, what I would ask in the interim is the potential for us to get a grading permit or a demo permit in this period. I don't know if that can be addressed.
If you want that, then you will need the Planning Commission to consider the project as the 6-unit period, because then we will have an approved plan that you could move forward with, and then we would meet, discuss the idea of increasing it to a 9-unit project, and you can always come back and amend the project. But that would be a certain risk, because you would have to ask yourself the question of, would I proceed with foundations and grading what if you didn't get the approval for the 9-unit, or what if it became a code concern where the finances didn't work?
Correct. So it sounds like that would be the best route to go, the most conservative way to do it. So yeah, that's how we do that, is just come in with a new plan then and ask that the demo permit then be done at that point, right?
Yes, I'm not your accountant or anything, but if I were you, that feels like significant risk, that to me it would be best to hold. Let's meet, and we can do that quickly, and then renotice the project, and we could renotice it as early as, Elizabeth, I might need some help, the February 10th meeting potentially. So it doesn't have to be a significant delay, but it could be a month delay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Is that your preferred route?
I think so.
And that still gives us time to meet that spring construction start?
I think so, if that, and I'll stay up here also if there's any other questions that you want me to address here also, unless that's it.
Yeah, it would help to hear from the Planning Commission if there was other concerns that you would like to have considered. If there's not, then we'd be looking for a motion to postpone.
Do we need to have the public hearing first or not?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Yes. that would
I'd like
help.
to do that.
Sorry.
Yes. Why don't you take a seat? We'll do the public hearing, see if anyone has anything they'd like to mention, and then we'll move forward from there. So I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today on this case, 960 and 1004 Diamond Ave, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us.
Oh, sorry. Knee surgery. I've got some photos here that I've taken of the top.
Here, why don't you go ahead and hand them here, and then I'll have you step back at the mic and state your name before you start talking, just so that we can get it on the record.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Todd Bronkema. I own the property directly to the south, 952 and 954 Diamond. I've met the new owner already once when he was over there looking at it. I looked at the property to purchase it also and found through the hooking up to the water and sewer was going to be not economical to put 2 duplexes on it, because I assumed there could, in the neighborhood there are duplexes. I have a duplex right next door. They're all over the place. And I have other around the town, around the Grand Rapids, so I'm pretty familiar with how things work on that regard. Some of the pictures you'll see, my property is between the houses. There's pictures. It's a 5-foot, 5 foot between next to my house to this property. It steps up 5 feet because you're going up the hill. And from what I can, when I was out there yesterday and today, all the trees on the south side of this property as far as I can tell, because it's not been surveyed, there's no survey stakes. As far as I can tell, all the trees on the south side are on my side of the property line. So they're on my line, but hanging over, into both properties. Seeing that the building, and I'm also a builder, seeing that the property is not going to have a basement, it looks like it's just footings. I'm kind of concerned, and it's only 7 foot from the lot line. I mean, so all these huge trees are going to be 7 foot from an excavation site to put in footings, and basically you can't put a footing in without digging it wide enough to get in. So it's either going to kill the trees, cause them to die, or whatever. And then whose problem is that? Is that mine, since they're on my side of the property line, or whoever? So that was a concern of mine. I was also concerned about the drainage issue, that the drop-off into the back, there's quite elevation change from front to back of this property, where it's obvious they're either going to haul in a lot of fill, or they're going to push the top off into the fill the hole up, and fill some of the hole up to get rid of some of to help with filling in the property. So I don't know where all that water goes. It was mentioned that they were thinking about putting a drainage system in, so that's a good thing. Where you're going to drain it to, I'm not sure, because you're halfway up the hill, because Carrier Creek is two houses down yet, below this whole property. So that was a concern. I'm also was concerned, they keep referring to these as condos. Condos you sell. I guess it's I've never heard that are these going to be rental properties, or are they going to be owner occupied? That would be a concern of mine. I don't care. If they're rentals, I'd like to know that they're rentals. That's not a problem. I did have the same concern as soon as I clicked on it and looked at that layout. I do the same thing. There's a kitchen. That's a 2-unit upstairs. Plain and simple. That's if I was doing a house, that's a 2-unit setup. I did think I talked to Elizabeth. She says, well, there's not a stove there. So there's enough room to put a stove, and the bathtub could go right over top of the stairway going up. So, or a shower. So I wasn't, that would concern me if it became 9 units instead of a 6. I don't really think that fits the aesthetics of the neighborhood. You'll see I took pictures across the street, going up and down the street. Most everything is 1-story Cape Cods. So it just doesn't fit. I might not be, I would probably be okay with it if maybe it was just 2. I think it's a lot to cram on that small spot myself.
Okay, thank
and
you.
I wouldn't be, according.
Yep.
My timer.
Yeah, sorry, the
I'm
timer
sorry.
up here wasn't going, but it was back here, so.
Oh,
your
okay, yeah,
time-
I'm watching it.
Yeah,
How
I
come
know,
it's not
yeah.
even started yet?
Yep, your
Okay.
time has expired,
Okay.
so thank you for your comments.
Oh, okay, thank you very
Hopefully
much.
a tabling might give you an opportunity to have some
Yeah,
of those questions
that's-
answered and some
that
follow-up
poss-
conversation.
Yes,
Yep,
thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Anyone else on this case? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. I don't know if there's anything you want to address at this point, or if there's other questions for the applicant before we move forward. No? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think tabling this so that we can have the applicant have some conversations about whether it's 9 units or 6 units and notice it appropriately so we can make that decision is the way to go. So I will make. Oh, yeah, please. I will give you 30 more seconds.
Okay, yep, we're good.
Okay, so I'll make a motion. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning commission, so on here it always says postpones, but we typically say tables. Is it tables open? Is it postpones? What is the? Then I'll table it open to the next available.
Unless you have the date in front of you, Elizabeth?
I don't understand how it could be tabled if we're going to increase the number of dwelling units.
We would table it and then amend it and renotice it. We table consideration on this one, amend the application and renotice it. Unless Amber has concerns with that.
No, I guess, that's fine, I would just consider it a new application. But that's fine, so.
Okay.
Either way, it's fine.
So tabling, unless
Tabling.
you know what date would make sense, Elizabeth.
Yep,
Is there room on that agenda?
I think we can work to facilitate that date.
Okay, then I will amend my resolution here and say, now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission postpones until the February 10th Planning Commission meeting, the special land use and site plan review request of Remax United Rod Horlings for approval of a multifamily development consisting of 6 units and 3 new buildings at 960 and 1004 Diamond Avenue Northeast. That's it.
Okay, we have a motion and support from Commissioner Shannon. Okay, any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Our next case is 330 Fuller Ave Northeast. Give Elizabeth a chance to get that pulled up.
Okay, so who are are you guys, are you my church folks? Okay, feel free to come on up here. The next item on the agenda is a request to use an existing office, portion of an existing office building as a church. The subject property is at 330 Fuller Avenue Northeast. It's in the TNTBA zone district. It is right next to Fuller Park and is south of Michigan. This is before you today because churches require special land use approval in most every zone district. The subject property is included in the Michigan Street Corridor Plan where the future land use has been identified as mixed-use neighborhood service. I'll just go back to this. The property is about 1/3 of an acre. It has about 3,000 square feet in area. It's not terribly large. The front of the building is used as an office, and the back was, I believe, a physical therapy office, and it's now vacant. There is a parking lot of 16 spaces at the back of the building, and there's no on-street parking at this part of Fuller. This is a small congregation. I understand approximately 5 to 10 families are proposed to attend church meetings. They generally meet on Sunday, and there are also prayer meetings on Tuesday evenings. There may also be occasional small group meetings from time to time. Relative to parking, a church or a house of worship is considered an assembly use, and the applicant did not work with a design professional to determine the number of occupants based on the way they propose to use the building. So I don't have a maximum occupancy. However, if we back into that based on the available parking spaces, the 16 space lot could support up to 64 occupants. And I'm assuming here that the office use and the church use would be used at different times. So the maximum occupancy for a 16 space parking lot for an assembly use would be 64 occupants. I did pass that number by the applicant, who felt that that would be sufficient for their purposes. So if the Planning Commission is amenable, then the maximum would be a 64 person occupancy, even if building code could allow something larger. the Planning Commission does grant parking waivers frequently, but given that we don't know, the number of people, I think probably 64 occupants is where we might want to land. The applicant has submitted a summary of neighborhood outreach and also included emails of support from surrounding businesses. So in sum, we're looking at a special land use for a religious institution in an existing office building.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Commissioners, any questions? No? Okay, thank you. I'll invite the applicant up if there's other details you want to share with us.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Browning. I'm a member of the church. I just wanted to say that typically we have these days 10 to 15 meeting on Sundays. If everybody showed up, we'd be at about 25 to 30. So it seems to me that maybe the biggest concern that she had was the parking, but I think as of now, we'd be really challenged to fill 16 parking spaces, so I don't think it's an issue in the slightest, not for the present time. Of course, we'd like to grow our membership and expand the testimony, but as of now, I think that we have more than enough parking. I think if everybody showed up, it would be half full, notwithstanding that right now we're meeting on Zoom, actually. So, one more item is that the office that's in the front is a real estate office that belongs to the owner of the building that we'd be renting from. So that's not really busy. And of course, real estate, unless we're talking about open houses, doesn't do a lot of business on Sundays. It's Saturdays, but these days it doesn't involve a lot of going to the office. So we don't anticipate any conflict of building usage and parking lot usage. So we think that we would basically never be parking on the street or in the surrounding neighborhoods.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Just I'm trying to read the floor plan. Is there, how do you access the office? Is there a hallway or something between the meeting room and the office room, or is there something outside a door?
Oh, in this lower left corner? Mm-hmm. Can you see my finger here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No.
No, okay. It looks like the top right corner, now I've highlighted the whole thing, is actually a doorway. So there is a door between the one labeled meeting room and office room.
Thank you.
Would all of your congregants be driving in, or would you have pedestrians coming? And I ask just because Fuller Avenue is such a busy road.
Well, it is, but it's not all that busy at 10 a.m. on Sunday. It's really not. We had a question about that. I personally did too. And but yeah, they would all be driving. I can think of maybe only 2 people who could possibly make it there on foot, and I don't think they're inclined to try. Maybe if it was 70 degrees and sunny. Maybe not even then.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. I'll open up the public hearing. If you're here today about this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions or discussion? Kristen, why don't you?
Some comment for dialogue for the record before we move to a motion?
I didn't call for a motion yet.
I'm just making sure.
I was concerned initially about the proximity to Michigan and Fuller because that corner is so crazy and terrible. But with it being a small, like a limited number of people allowed to be there based on the number of parking spaces, even if they do grow, the traffic impact doesn't seem that significant. So I'm comfortable with it.
Any expansion, if they were to take over more floor area, for example, that would also require the Planning Commission to reconsider whether it's an appropriate expansion at that point.
Great, yeah, that's good to know. And it's in a TBA, right? I did also have some concerns about this use being in a TBA because it's not super active, and that's what we want in a TBA. But I'm flexible.
It seems to me, and I understand your concern, this is kind of more of a backdoor operation, being not on the frontage, and possibly the congregants would utilize some of the businesses in the areas before and after services. So I think that given the availability and the time of the week, this would be a good use. And I'll make a motion if you'd like.
Okay, I'm open to that.
Whereas the Church of Grand Rapids, Campbell Waterworth, has requested special land use and site plan
You
review.
can skip right down to the now therefore if you don't mind. Thanks.
It's been too long. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review request of the Church in Grand Rapids, Campbell Waterworth, to establish a church in an existing office building located at 330 Fuller Avenue Northeast for the following reasons. 1, the proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the proposed use will provide a mix of uses in a commercial area and improve the quality of life in the city. 2A, the proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment, because the proposed use will support the desired mixed-use character of the neighborhood. It will put an existing underutilized building back into productive use. 2B, the proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because the proposed use will be appropriately located within the building and adequate parking is available on site. The proposed uses will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, or visual clutter because no outdoor or late evening activities will be conducted. The proposed use will not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the building already establishes the street wall and no exterior changes will be made to the building. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the financial stability and/or economic welfare of the city because the use is not anticipated to create nuisances that will require additional city services. And the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all applicable state laws because it complies with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all other state laws. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Number 1, standard condition set A approvals, which I think are up here on the sign or on the wall. And 2, the occupancy shall be limited to 64 persons based on the available parking of the 16 spaces. That is the resolution.
All right, do we have support?
Support.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you. Our last case is 1318 Plainfield Ave Northeast.
Yeah,
an approval in the mail or email. Thank you.
The last item on the agenda is a request to rezone the easterly portion of 1318 Plainfield Avenue Northeast from TN MDR traditional neighborhood mixed density residential to the TN TBA traditional business area zone district. 1318 Plainfield is located currently in two zone districts. The kind of northwesterly portion is located, it's fronting on Plainfield Avenue or in the TN TBA zone district, as you can see in this slide right here. And then the easterly southern portion of the property is located in the adjacent MDR zone district. The property is improved with a parking lot. I believe that parking lot was constructed some years ago when there was a, I think it was a funeral home. The building to the north was used as a funeral home. I might be wrong on the location, but I know this was parking for a funeral home. And together, the parcel is just about 6,500 square feet. It's not very big. And the easterly portion, about 2,500 square feet, is in the TN MDR zone district. As you can see on this slide, and on the other slide, well, you can't see on this slide, but it is one parcel. I did do a little bit of research to try to figure out when, to try to understand information about the lot combination and lot split. I wasn't able to quite figure that out, but I have a feeling that after the residential portion was paid for use of a parking lot, it was then combined into one lot, and then we had a property in two zone districts. In the past, planning department staff didn't always have the opportunity to review those lot splits and combinations, and we try to avoid that today. I actually, here's the survey of the property. The applicant does own this building to the north of Shanahan. You might be familiar with Shanahan. There's the big house on the hill right behind it. And the applicant would like the whole parcel in one zone district to facilitate future development opportunities, and he's here today, so he can speak in greater detail about that. I did pull up the original plat map, and you can see that the residential property on Page did go all the way to this King Court, which is now Shanahan. So there was some lot split in the past, and I really can't speak to how that happened. The property is fairly small, and, but if redeveloped or developed, it would need to meet all the requirements of the zone district. I understand that the applicant may be pursuing a vacation of a part of Shanahan Street to create a larger development parcel. That is not part of your consideration today, but I just wanted to let you know for a little bit of background. The applicant did meet with the Creston Neighborhood Association, and they have no objection to this proposal. And we also do have another letter in the packet from another business on Plainfield, which has expressed support for the proposal. So if the Planning Commission is amenable to this change, then you'd be making a recommendation to the City Commission. There'd be no conditions of approval. You'd be making a recommendation, and then it would go to City Commission for final approval. I think one last thing I wanted to mention, there's no area-specific plan that's adopted for this area. So we do look to the 2002 master plan. And as we always reiterate, that's not really a parcel by parcel or a lot by lot future land use recommendation, but the map does show this as traditional business area. And that would make sense given the depth of other properties that are zoned TBA in the area. I'll be happy to answer any questions for you should you have them.
Any questions for Elizabeth? No? All right. Thanks, Elizabeth. I'll invite the applicant up if there's other details you want to share with us.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tim Brom. I own Plainfield Ventures LLC, and I also own United Commercial Services. We bought both of these lots back in 2019 and did a complete and total restoration of the facility north of the subject property. I met with Greg Metz from Architectural, our architect, and talked about the future and what it can hold, right? I mean, the first obstacle he said is you've got a really small 2,500 square foot parcel with a 20-foot access to it off of Shanahan that's really quite useless, and that what we really should try to do is combine that with parcel 3 to make it all contiguous and TBA. Unfortunately, I don't have any future plans at this time for the development or what I want to do, but this is the first step in moving down that road, so to speak.
All right. Any questions for the applicant? None? Okay. All right. Thanks.
I just want to note too, and thank you, Elizabeth, the Creston Business Association actually approved this motion or this rezoning rather than just object, which I was happy to see. And I think that's in your packet as well.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks. I'll open up a public hearing on this rezone request. If you're here today about this case, please come forward, state your name, and share your brief thoughts with us.
Afternoon, I'm Greg Metz. I'm the architect for the project. Just a few things to add. I was born and raised in the Creston district, so I know since the 70s this lot's been paved. So I think it's gone through a couple zoning maps, and there's always been 2 zones. So early on, Tim and I looked at what could happen if we develop this, and having the MDR designation does limit what we can do with that property. So it'd be nice if it could all be contiguous as one TBA. And I know in 2007, the Creston Business District did do a work plan or something to that effect, and they, in that work plan, they really want TBA here. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Greg. Anyone else? Okay. I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant or discussion? Sorry, Kristen?
Oh, I was just going to say that as it's one parcel and more than half of the parcel is already in the TBA zone district, I don't think it makes sense to have 2 different zone districts on one parcel. Therefore, I would be in favor of this and would be happy to make a motion, but Kristen has comments, I think, before.
I was just going to comment that I've been with the city since 2013, and I've had a number of redevelopment conversations about the specific property prior to Mr. Brom's purchase, and this has always been an issue, and in my opinion, an impediment to good redevelopment of this area because of the lot size, the shape, as well as the split zoning. And so, through our conversations, even though there's no immediate plans, I do agree that I think that this is a first good step towards getting either redevelopment of this property, and whether or not it can combine with the main parcel across Shanahan, I'm not sure yet, but that's something that we have explored and at least seems viable should Mr. Brom wish to pursue it. A lot that goes into that evaluation, but I do agree that there's been a number of impediments to anything other than what's there happening with this parcel. So I think that this will give us greater opportunity.
Shall I make a motion?
Anyone else? Okay, go ahead then.
Okay. Therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommends approval of the request of Plainfield Ventures LLC Tim Brom to rezone the subject property from TNMDR Traditional Neighborhood Mixed Density Residential Zone District to the TNTBA Traditional Business Area Zone District for the following reasons. The proposed zone district will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the future land use map, because the property is proposed to be rezoned to the original master plan zoning designation of traditional business area. The proposed zone district will further the themes and objectives of the master plan as well as any relevant, there are no area-specific plans. The proposed zone district will further the themes and objectives of the master plan because the residential designation by the 2002 master plan does not adequately address current development needs. The property to be rezoned can reasonably accommodate the requirements of the proposed zone district because the property will meet the minimum requirements of the proposed zone district. The proposed zone district designation is compatible with the existing zone districts in the neighborhood because a portion of the property is already zoned as desired, as are adjacent properties. The physical, geological, hydrological, and other environmental features of the property to be rezoned are compatible with the full range of uses in the proposed zone district because there are no apparent environmental features on the properties that would inhibit the full range of uses on the property if rezoned. The proposed zone district or neighborhood classification will not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the proposed zone change may encourage fuller utilization of the property in question as well as surrounding properties. The proposed zone district is consistent with the trend of development in the neighborhood because abutting property is zoned TNTBA. The property to be rezoned was improperly zoned or classified when this chapter was adopted or amended because the zoning resulted in a parcel located in two zone districts. And rezoning the property as proposed would not negatively impact the condition of any nearby parcels currently zoned mixed-use commercial, especially considering vacancy rates, current per square foot lease or sale rates, and other impacts because the rezoning and reuse of the properties will encourage other investment in the district. That's it.
Support?
All right, we have a motion and support. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you. I will open up the public comment portion of the meeting. If you have anything to share with us, now is an opportunity to come forward and state your name and share your brief thoughts.
Well, I've stated my name before. I'm Joanne King, and I do have some thoughts concerning the whole process. It appears that I was the only one that was in opposition, and I was not. Those that were in support of that proposal didn't live in the area. So I'm just wondering, does it make a difference? Because I could have got a whole lot of people to write letters of support outside of the area because they were living in Wyoming, they were living on Dunham, they were living on Kalamazoo. They didn't live in the area. The people on that petition lived in the area. So it wasn't just me. So I'm wondering, how does the process work in terms of when people are giving their support, can you have people outside of the affected area to lend their support? Because I think it's probably not benefiting the people who have to endure the things that we had to endure based on whomever had the party at 821. So And in your packet, there was a letter, there was a petition, there were, I sent many emails with pictures, and I'm wondering, how does the process work so that I will know in the future how this works? Because it seems like it was all for naught and like the decision was already made when you came to this meeting. So I just would like to know how that works. And then secondly of all, in the minutes of the meeting, will there be an explicit, detailed of whatever you read as the motion? Is that included in the minutes so that we know exactly what is required of this facility or these owners of this facility? And is that requirement going to have to be in place before they can rent it out to anybody? Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'll answer your last question first, Ms. King. So the answer is yes. We are very fortunate to have a very talented recording secretary. And so the minutes of the Planning Commission's decision are very detailed and will incorporate that. Not only are the minutes part of the record that will dictate or direct how that use shall operate, but they are also responsible to adhere to all the commitments made in the application, subject to any amendments that were a part of the Planning Commission's resolution. So there's a number of items so that should there be an enforcement issue, someone like myself works with the Code Compliance Department to review the minutes. We review the resolution that are that was effectively read this afternoon as well, and going through the application itself. So that will all be part of it, and I'm happy to provide that to you once that's prepared. Oops. Once that's prepared. I don't know what to do. Okay. The first part of your question is, does it matter where people live? It's a both. So the enabling legislation does require the city to notice for certain cases like this one today, everybody within 300 feet. And I think that is an acknowledgement that those that are within that distance may have a more direct impact resulting from the use itself. And so I don't know that I would go so far as to say that their voices are valued more, but it should be I think a point where the Planning Commission considers how that impact may affect those individuals compared to those that live further out. The city is also, in addition to that 300-foot notice I mentioned, we are required to publish in the Grand Rapids Press, which I think might be somewhat antiquated, but it does require us to put a notice out in multiple places for those that might be interested that don't live within that 300-foot buffer. And it's not unusual for us to have criticism that 300 is simply not enough, that those that live 500 or 1,000 feet away are equally impacted. So there are a variety of ways that we notice the project, but only those that live within close proximity are specifically noticed, meaning they receive the postcards. I think it's also important to consider what input is received. So the Planning Commission also has a responsibility to make sure that it's not a popularity contest. It's not, we don't like this operator or we really want this specific use in this location. It's the content of that input. The Planning Commission must make a land use decision based on the certain standards that you heard them reference today, certain standards. And so that input is really only helpful or relevant if it speaks to the specific standards of their consideration. And, what the standard is not is, did more people submit in favor of or in opposition of? That's not a standard. It's about the quality of life and the potential impacts of traffic and circulation. So when the input speaks to the standards, that's where it's most valuable for the Planning Commission's incorporation into their deliberative process. And, planning staff in the future, if we would like to set up a time to go through that again, I know I'm talking a little bit quickly, we're happy to do that with you or the neighborhood as well. We'd really appreciate the opportunity to engage so that our community knows when to engage and how best to engage so that their voices are heard.
Thank you. All right, I'll close the public comment portion. Did you have something to add?
If I could just add, the area-specific plans are something that we do rely a lot on, and I know you were a part of developing one of those, and we do really appreciate that. That helps bring the voice forward without having individuals have to come up and speak. So we do rely on those a lot as well.
Okay, any other business or discussion on anything? Kristen?
Just a reminder that the next Planning Commission meeting in 2 weeks is back at 2:01. What did I say that? 11:20? I'm sorry. It's back at 11:20. Unfortunately, this chamber was already booked, and they weren't willing to negotiate with us.
Anyone want to try negotiating with them on our behalf? Okay.
It wasn't available. So.
Wait, who is it?
Don't put me on that spot.
All right. Thank you. We're adjourned. See you in a couple weeks.